Alright guys, I saw this posted on the Facebook groups, and I thought I'd make a quick video about how to do it. This is how to set up a VPN connection through a GL.iNet mini router with port forwarding, so that if you are on a connection that you do not have the ability to port forward, or it's at a third party's house where you want to uh, secure the data flowing across the miner for whatever reason, this is how you could do it. First things first, what you will need is one of the GL.iNet routers, mini routers. They look like this. You can get them on Amazon. The two that I'm familiar with is the GL.AR750S or the GL.MT1300. The difference is this one's a little bit more expensive. It draws a little bit more power. It is a little bit faster, but for what we're doing with Helium, it really doesn't matter. I prefer the cheaper one, although it's not much cheaper. It doesn't draw as much power, so if you have a Helium miner with a USB port that you can gain access to, you can power it via that USB port and reduce the number of cables you have in your enclosure if you're putting it outside or whatever the case may be. So what I have here is a brand new GL.AR750S that I have not touched yet. We're going to walk through the whole process of how to get this up and running with a VPN service called PureVPN. The reason I like them is because they still support PPtP and port forwarding, and it's one of the few port forwarding options that will work on a mini router that you don't have to run their software on the desktop in order to get it to work. And it's relatively inexpensive. You just need to get their VPN service and add the port forwarding feature. I think it cost me like $100 for 5 years, and you can use that service one account on up to 10 devices or 10 connections. So one VPN account would allow you to do this on 10 mini routers. Pretty sick deal. So to start off with, the first thing we need to do is we need to connect to the router. If you are hardwired in, you should be able to just go to the IP address of the router, which is 192.168.8.1. If you're trying to connect wirelessly, the first thing we need to do is connect to it. So we'll come down here. We'll connect to the GL.AR750 dash, and the value here will be different depending on which router you have because they're unique to the actual model or device. Click on that. Default password for this is GoodLife. And we're connected now. So now we just need to go to the router's address, which is 192.168.8.1. Bring up your initialization menu. Just click Next for English. Password, whatever you want it to be. Hit Submit. Now the first thing we'll do is we're going to upgrade the router so that it has all of the updates it needs. But before we can do that, we need to make sure that the router has some type of internet connection. If you've got it plugged into your home internet via the WAN port, you should be good here. You'll see like cable green lit. But if you're going to use it as a repeater or you need to connect to your network wirelessly, you can click down here on Scan. And then choose your home network. Hit Join. And now you will see that the wireless connection is green. So now that we're connected to the internet, we can go to Upgrade. Choose Online Upgrade. Don't know why I'm not getting the option to right now. All right, we'll skip over that for now. After you upgrade, come down to Advanced. You will see an error that says LuCI error not installed yet. If you give it a second here, it's going to refresh the software repository, after which we should be able to install LuCI. All right, there we go. Install LuCI. And now it says update software packages. So back over to upgrade. Try this again. And like I said, this is a brand new router, so this is probably the experience you'll have too. Applications, plugins. Applications, plugins. Update. Now, while we wait for this, like I said, you'll probably want to have a PureVPN account already set up with the port forwarding add-on enabled. There we go. So now it's going to install LuCI, which is basically a GUI interface for the OpenWRT software that's running this thing behind the scenes, and that's what we're going to use to kind of configure this to allow for PPtP connections and to set up the failover, turn that off, and make sure that all traffic flows through the VPN connection and not through the internet connection of the router. That's important. We want to make sure that all traffic goes over that VPN so that when we do the port forwarding, we know that the port forwarding is working properly. Okay. You should get it successfully installed, etc. Now it'll be a link instead of the button. We click the link. It will take you to a new login page. The password here is going to be the same password that you set up for the router itself, and the username is root. Click login. And here we go. Okay, now that we're this far, the next thing we want to do is we want to SSH into the router. So we need to open up a command prompt. And from here, we're going to type SSH root at 192.168.8.1. Click enter. Okay, and you probably will get a different screen than this, but because I've set up multiple routers, I need to fix my host file. So we'll do that really quick here. We want to clear that out so that it can get a new RSA key. To do that, we'll go to our users folder, to SSH, and then to known hosts. So we'll open this up. And because I don't want to lose any of my old SSH keys for the 8.1s that I've used before, we'll just go ahead and take those out, cut it, save, run this again. Now it's going to ask me if I am sure I want to use the key fingerprint. Type yes, hit enter, and then it will ask for the password. Type in the same password you used to get into the router. And now we are SSH'd into the router. Now we'll come back to our known host file. We'll see it added that new record, and we'll just paste in the old records so that if we have to connect to any of the old routers we had, we're good to go. But again, with it being your first router, you shouldn't have to worry about this. But if you do set up multiple routers, this may be something you have to do as well. So back to our SSH screen here. There is a script you're going to have to run to set everything up. I will go over some of the details a little bit here. Here's the script. I will post this in the link below the video in the description. But the first thing we're going to do is install some packages to do what we need to do. Nano for editing files. PPtP is going to enable the PPtP VPN connections. Policy routing. A GUI for MWAN, which will turn off. Um, and then the NAT helper extras, which we need for the NAT translations. Below that, the things you'll have to change here is what server you want to use from PureVPN, your username and your password, which you'll get from PureVPN. It is not the username password you use to log into the account. There is a separate VPN username password you have to get. If you go through their site, you'll get it once you get in there. The next thing we do is we configure the firewall. We set up our firewall zones, LAN and WAN. The next thing we do is we set up the PPTP connection for the network interface. We turn off IPv6, don't need that. Then we're going to disable and stop the load balancing, which is the MWAN 3, and then restart the network. Once that's all done, the next thing we're going to do is change some configuration options on PPTP to make sure that the VPN connection works properly. And then the last step is to add some firewall rules to allow traffic to flow between the VPN connection and your LAN network. Simple enough, right? So what we'll do here is we're going to copy from install packages down to network restart. Just copy that. Go over here, paste. And one thing I messed up on here was that I did not change the username and password on this file before I installed it, but that's okay. You can rerun this script, does not hurt anything. So what I will do is I am going to open up a different file here, turn this transition off really quick, turn it back on. All right. Come back over here, network restart, and we're just not going to do network restart right now because we're going to rerun the file, but this time I'll grab the file with the username and password in it and paste that in here. Okay. Now we're back at network restart. You'll see that time it went by a lot quicker because it did not need to install all of these packages here. They were already installed, so it just skipped over it. Click restart or enter. Now, if you are connected to the router via a wireless connection, you're probably going to lose connection to the router when you do the network restart. That's fine. We'll just reconnect to it. And we should get a message here in a second saying it disconnected. Yep. All right. Give it a few seconds here to reestablish the network connection. We'll come back over here. We'll look for that same connection again. Right there. Connect. Now that we're connected, come back over here, and again, SSH root at 192.168.8.1. Hit enter. Put your password in, and back in here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the options PPTP file, and to do that, we can just copy this or type it in. Oh, sorry. That will open up a text editor in SSH, and you'll see that a lot of these options differ from what we have here. We can delete everything here and just copy and paste, or we can go through and add them in one by one, but we'll just copy and paste. So delete everything that was there. Right click to paste it in there. Now to save the file, we're going to hold down Control, then O, hit Enter, and then Control and X to exit that file. The next step we need to do is we need to add some firewall rules. So we will do a nano to the firewall config. And these are all the firewall rules that currently exist. We'll just use our arrow key here to scroll all the way down. Once we're at the bottom, we will copy these two configs. Right click in here, add those in. Again, Control O to save, Control X to close. Now that that's done, if we come back over here, we'll see that during this time it's already made a PPtP connection to PureVPN. We now have an IP address, and the next thing we need to do is check to see if we have a good connection going out. So we are going to go to our diagnostics, click on ping, make sure it can ping out. Okay, and then the next thing to do is to click traceroute. And what we're looking for here is we want to make sure that when we traceroute out, it's not going over our internal network, it's going over the VPN network. And you can see that the first thing it hits is like a 104, then a 10.10.3.1, etc. You'll have to figure out if this IP address here is your external IP address for your normal internet connection or not, but typically it won't be. You should be good. Now that that's all set up, I do recommend powering off the device, the router, waiting a few minutes, powering it back on, and doing this check again. Sometimes the first time you run that script, it does not save the piece where it asks you to, right here, the MWAN disabled and stop. For some reason, on the second load, that will be re-enabled. But usually after you load it up again and run these two commands, or actually these three commands right here again, then it will disable it and stop it, and you're good. You should not have any more problems going forward. But if you ever get into a situation where you can connect, you see that when you go to network interfaces, the PPtP connection is online, you have an IP address, and you see traffic, but you can't get out to the internet. Run those commands in SSH, and that should fix it. Or alternatively, you can go to System, Startup, find MWAN in here, make sure it's disabled, and just for good measure, you can click Stop just to make sure it's stopped. Now that that's all set up, the next thing we need to do is you'll want to connect your miner to this device, be it via Wi-Fi or via a hardwired connection. But once it's connected, we need to set up some firewall rules to do port forwarding. So for that, we'll go to Network, Firewall, go to Port Forwards, and we'll click Add. Make sure you click on Protocol and you just deselect UDP and just leave TCP connected. Give it a name. Make sure source zone is WAN and it says VPN here. Set your external port to 44158. Make sure destination zone says LAN. You're going to choose your internal IP address of your Helium miner, whatever that may be. And for this, we'll just choose my computer and act like that's the Helium miner. Internal port of 44158, and then hit save. Now you can, if you want, you can come in here and set up some additional rules for accessing your miner's internal status page. I don't recommend it unless you know what you're doing or you have a device that has some kind of security built in with a username and password. SenseCap now uses the serial number and the CPU ID, I believe, to secure their configuration pages. But again, this is up to you. I don't recommend it, but I will show you how. Again, just click Add, TCP, make sure that's only selected, and then Web Interface, or whatever name you want. Choose your external port. Now, the external port, or the internal port rather, is port 80, but we want to obfuscate it a little bit and make it a little bit harder for somebody to get a hold of that, so they're not just getting port 80 and they come across to you. I like doing something like, I don't know, one number above the port, so 44159, right? LAN, internal IP, again, choose your miner, and then the internal port, you'd set it 80. Now, when you do this, what will happen is you can go to the IP address :44159, and it will take you to the web address of the miner. So that you can access that page remotely. Say you want to do a fast boot or a fast sync, you'd still have access to that. Again, not a huge fan of this, but it is something you can do if you want to. We'll click Save here. Once you've clicked Save, you do need to click Save and Apply. If you do not click Save and Apply, these settings will not save. So we'll click Save and Apply right now. And at this point, you should be able to go to Port Checker and see if this port is opened or if this port is opened to the IP address in Interfaces PPtP, which is this right here. There are some more advanced things you can do, like set up DDNS so that you can go to this router with a shortcut domain name instead of the IP address, but we won't cover that here. This is just a really quick example of how to set up the GL.iNet mini routers with a VPN connection and port forwarding. Thanks for watching. If you feel this helped you out in any way and want to donate some helium, I'd be more than happy to accept it. I'll leave my address in the comments. Thanks.